Hola? What's the weather like where you are today? Sunny, rainy, cloudy? Comment below.
Imagine scrolling through your family group chat on a crisp autumn evening, the kind where the leaves outside your Ohio window are turning that fiery red that screams holiday stress is just around the corner. And there it is, Mom's message popping up like an unwelcome guest. We're hosting Lisa's reception this Christmas, but there's no room for you too. Your heart sinks a little, but before you can even process the sting, your sister chimes in with that casual expectation: you'll still handle the video like always, and then Dad seals it with his blunt reminder: don't make it emotional. Just remember my gift. You stare at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard, but instead of firing back, you type nothing, close the app, and let a slow smile creep across your face because they have absolutely no clue about the storm you're about to unleash, one frame at a time. That will make this Christmas one they'll never forget or forgive, especially since I've spent the better part of my adult life as Emily Harper, the 45-year-old freelance videographer who's always been the invisible thread holding our family's highlight reels together. Capturing every joyous milestone from Lisa's college graduation bash to Mom and Dad's silver anniversary party in their sprawling suburban colonial that always feels more like a stage set for someone else's spotlight than a home for all of us. That particular evening in mid-October found me hunkered down in my cozy home office in our modest ranch-style house an hour away, the late afternoon sunlight slanting through the half-drawn blinds and illuminating the cluttered desk where my editing software hummed softly in the background. Midway through polishing a client's wedding montage that involved splicing tender vows with sweeping drone shots of the venue, the kind of professional work that actually puts food on our table and pays for the kids' tuition now that they're off at state universities carving their own paths far from the family entanglements I grew up navigating. The phone buzzed insistently on the arm of my chair, pulling me from the flow state I'd finally settled into after a morning of chasing down freelance leads through emails and LinkedIn connections, and as I picked it up, the group chat notifications stacked up like accusations waiting to be unpacked, starting with Mom, Carol's precise and no-nonsense proclamation about centering the holidays around Lisa's latest achievement, whatever it was this time. A promotion in her corporate marketing role. Or perhaps the announcement of her engagement to that slick finance guy she'd been dating, while matter-of-factly excluding Mark and me from the guest list under the guise of limited space. As if our absence was just a logistical footnote rather than a deliberate sidelining that echoed all those times we'd been the afterthoughts in family planning, choosing instead to build our quieter life here with weekend barbecues and game nights that didn't revolve around performative perfection. Lisa wasted no time piling on with her breezy assumption that I'd step up as the unofficial event cinematographer just like I had for the past decade and a half, turning her special moments into glossy compilations she could share on social media to bolster her image of the accomplished eldest daughter, completely overlooking the fact that my skills, honed through self-taught courses and late-night practice sessions after putting the family first, represented a career I'd sacrificed stability for, squeezing in these freebies around paid gigs that barely covered the mortgage on our place where Mark tinkered in the garage on his off days from the auto repair shop. Then came Dad, Robert's terse follow-up that landed like a cold splash of reality, cautioning against any sentimental flourishes in the footage and looping back to his so-called gift from the previous holiday season. A second-hand camera lens he dug out of his storage unit and presented with a pat on the back, framing it as paternal support when it really just underscored how they viewed my passion as a hobby to be indulged rather than a profession deserving of real investment or even basic reciprocity. I lingered over those messages for what must have been 10 minutes, the room gradually dimming as the sun dipped below the tree lean and cast elongated shadows across the walls adorned with framed stills from my portfolio, my thumb absently tracing the worn edges of the phone case Mark had picked out for me last Valentine's Day, weighing the impulse to fire off a pointed reply that called out the hypocrisy of expecting my labor while barring us from the festivities against the deeper wisdom that confrontation would only feed their narrative of me as the dramatic one, the middle child who couldn't let things go, so instead I drew in a steadying breath. the faint scent of cooling coffee mingling with the earthy aroma from the pumpkin candle flickering on the shelf, and felt a shift settle over me like the first chill of impending winter, a calculated calm that masked the simmering resolve to respond not with words, but with actions that would subtly dismantle their assumptions over the coming weeks. Mark wandered in then from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel after prepping a simple stir-fry for dinner. His broad shoulders filling the doorway as he caught the furrow in my brow and asked in that gentle baritone of his if everything was all right with the family circus gearing up again, and I forced a casual shrug, mentioning the reception invite, or lack thereof, in passing without delving into the raw edges of the hurt, because even with him, the one person who truly saw the toll it took, I wasn't ready to voice the plan crystallizing in my mind, the one that would leverage my access to their digital archives and my editing prowess to craft a narrative of my own making. Later that night, after we'd eaten and the dishes were stacked in the drying rack, I retreated back to the office under the pretense of finishing client work, but really I pulled up the extended family email thread for the event RSVPs, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I tweaked the details just enough to introduce a ripple of confusion, shifting arrival times for a handful of Lisa's high-profile invitees, those colleagues she paraded to validate her success, in a way that seemed like innocent oversight, but promised to sow the seeds of early disarray. Without any fingerprints leading back to me, a opening salvo in this quiet campaign of retribution that started small yet held the potential to escalate into something far more revealing. As I hit send and watched the confirmation pop up, a genuine smile tugged at my lips for the first time that evening. The kind born not from bitterness, but from the empowering certainty that they remained blissfully unaware of how I'd turned their dismissal into the fuel for a holiday reckoning, one that would build layer by layer until the reception itself became the stage for truths they'd long buried under layers of favoritism and forgotten promises, particularly when Dad's private text arrived moments later. Its cryptic warning about keeping certain histories in the past hinting at depths I was only beginning to plumb. That private text from Dad lingered on my screen like an uninvited shadow long after I'd closed the app and tried to shake off the unease it stirred. Its words warning me to avoid stirring up old pots during the video production, as if he could sense the direction my thoughts had veered since the group chat exclusion, prompting me to push forward into the preparatory phase with a renewed focus on gathering material that would serve both their expectations and my unspoken agenda, all while the autumn days shortened and the first hints of holiday decorations began popping up in neighborhood windows, reminding me how these family obligations always intertwined with the broader American tapestry of seasonal cheer, masking deeper relational fractures that so many of us in our 40s and 50s navigate year after year. The following week unfolded in a rhythm of calculated outreach, starting with scheduling those casual interview sessions via Zoom with various relatives under the pretext of collecting warm anecdotes for the reception montage, the kind of heartfelt segments that would ostensibly celebrate Lisa's achievements, while I subtly cataloged the patterns of favoritism that had defined our upbringing in that large Ohio household, where Dad's engineering job provided the stability and Mom's part-time teaching role added the cultural polish, yet somehow Lisa always emerged as the star pupil deserving of the extra spotlights, from the solo trips to Europe during summers to the leniency on curfews that I never quite received despite my own straight-A efforts balanced against after-school jobs to fund my early interest in filmmaking. Mark caught me one morning as I sipped my coffee at the kitchen table, the steam rising in lazy curls while he buttered toast for us both before heading out to the shop. And he raised an eyebrow at the open notebook beside my mug filled with scribbled questions for the interviews, gently probing whether I was truly committed to this path or if the hurt from the snub had twisted into something more vengeful that might leave lasting scars on relationships we couldn't afford to lose, especially with our son and daughter planning brief visits home around their college breaks and expecting the usual patchwork of family gatherings without added drama. I met his concerned gaze with a light-hearted deflection, joking about how at least these sessions would give me prime content for my portfolio reel once I anonymized the faces. though inwardly I acknowledged the validity of his caution since my choices were edging toward manipulations that even I questioned in quieter moments, like whether exposing these imbalances would empower me or just paint me as the bitter sibling in the eyes of aunts and uncles who had long accepted the family hierarchy as unchangeable. Diving into the first interview that afternoon with Aunt Margaret, Lisa's lively godmother on Mom's side, who lived just 20 minutes away in a cozy bungalow filled with knickknacks from her travels, brought immediate tension laced with unintended humor as she launched into tales of Lisa's childhood prodigy moments. Like the time she organized a neighborhood talent show at age 10 that drew a crowd of 50, while glossing over my parallel efforts in setting up the projectors and recording the acts, her laughter ringing out over the video call as she described it all with that affectionate bias that made my jaw clench subtly behind my on-camera smile. The exchange revealed fresh layers of past exclusions, such as how family vacations to the Smoky Mountains always prioritized Lisa's hiking adventures over my pleas for detours to local film festivals, framing it as natural sibling differences rather than the systemic overlooking that had me saving babysitting money for a used camcorder, while Lisa received her first digital camera as a birthday surprise. And as the call wrapped up with her enthusiastic sign-off about forwarding old photo albums, I felt the resentment bubble up, not in anger, but in a wry amusement at the predictability of it all, the kind of light vulgarity in my thoughts labeling their support as cheap generosity that cost them nothing but my endless supply of free labor. Emboldened by these insights, I spent the evening in my office sifting through the digital files she'd emailed over, the glow of the monitor illuminating stacks of printed stills from family events spanning 2 decades. And that's when I unearthed the minor secret tucked away in a folder labeled Holidays '09. A series of snapshots from that Christmas 15 years prior where Lisa beamed over her new laptop unboxing, while I hovered in the background holding a generic gift bag, but one blurred edge-of-frame shot captured Dad slipping an envelope to Mom with a hushed conversation about reallocating funds originally earmarked for my community college tuition toward Lisa's private art classes, a detail I'd suspected back then but never confirmed. Until now, fueling the fire as I transitioned to crafting a test clip for family approval. With careful edits in my software, I wove together a short montage blending those photos with clips from digitized home videos, infusing humor through upbeat music and voiceover quips about sibling spotlights stealing the show. That played Lisa's clumsier moments, like her infamous 8th grade science fair volcano that erupted prematurely all over the kitchen table, for laughs, yet I slyly inserted a slowed-down frame from that envelope exchange, its implications veiled just enough to intrigue. Without outright accusing, then attached the file to the group chat with a note soliciting feedback on the tone before the full production. The replies filtered in over the next day, Mom offering measured praise for the lovely flow, while Lisa responded with a string of enthusiastic emojis followed by a text demanding I cut the volcano bit because it made her look silly in front of everyone. Her embarrassment evident in the hurried tone that gave me a quiet thrill of satisfaction, the witty embarrassment landing precisely as intended without escalating to outright conflict, as relatives chimed in with chuckles about the nostalgia, turning what could have been a simple preview into a subtle mirror reflecting their overlooked dynamics. Yet as the digital dust settled from those interactions, a fresh wave of suspense crashed in late that evening when Dad's suspicious text arrived unprompted, its content more pointed than the last, alluding to a specific incident from our teenage years that he insisted stay off the cutting room floor, the vagueness of his plea only heightening my curiosity about what exactly he feared I might uncover next in this deepening excavation of our shared history. Dad's latest text hung in the air of my mind like a half-formed threat that propelled me deeper into the web of preparations the very next morning, as I juggled a full slate of freelance commitments, starting with editing a corporate training video for a local manufacturing firm whose deadlines loomed as unforgivingly as the winter chill seeping through the cracks in our old windows, all while stealing moments to refine the threads of my personal project that blurred the lines between professional duty and personal reckoning in ways that left me questioning the sustainability of this dual existence amid the escalating holiday buzz vibrating through every phone notification and email ping. November's gray, overcast skies seemed to mirror the uncertainty clouding my days, transforming routine tasks like dropping off dry cleaning or meal prepping for the week into opportunities for reflection on how this family's so-called generosity had always come wrapped in invisible strings, the kind that tugged at my time and talents without ever offering a reciprocal pull, prompting sardonic inner quips about their version of support feeling more like a one-way toll road where I footed the bill for everyone else's smooth ride through life's milestones. Mark amplified that internal tug-of-war during our evening walk around the block after his shift, the crisp air carrying the scent of fallen leaves as he linked his arm through mine and voiced his growing apprehension about the path I was treading, suggesting in his straightforward mechanics logic that bowing out now might preserve the fragile peace we maintained with my parents for the sake of future gatherings, especially since our kids had started hinting at joining neutral holiday events. That didn't involve the full-blown drama of past years, and though his words carried the weight of someone who'd witnessed my emotional burnout from similar slights before, I countered with a humorous deflection about how a little digital mischief was just my way of spicing up the season, like adding hot sauce to bland family casserole. Even as I privately wrestled with the dilemma of whether my escalating maneuvers positioned me as the clever underdog reclaiming agency or simply the spiteful outlier willing to risk relational fallout for a fleeting sense of justice. Pressing onward despite the hesitation, I dedicated the subsequent afternoons to delving further into the shared family cloud storage that I'd accessed under the cover of collaborative album organization years ago, navigating folders bloated with vacation snapshots and birthday collages that painted a glossy narrative of unity while hiding the fissures I'd long sensed, such as the disproportionate number of professional headshots for Lisa's career advancements compared to the casual candids of my own events, and in one particularly revealing thread of scan letters from a decade back, I uncovered exchanges between Mom and a family financial advisor, discussing reallocations of savings that favored Lisa's graduate school aspirations over my initial film program enrollment, framed innocently as prioritizing immediate opportunities, yet reeking of the biased calculus that had me funding my own path through side hustles while she sailed on parental winds. This discovery infused my next act of subtle subversion with a sharper edge, as I composed a mildly altered family anecdote for our interconnected social media circle under the guise of festive nostalgia building toward the reception, recounting a lighthearted tale of Dad's legendary gift-giving prowess from that pivotal Christmas 15 years ago, but twisting the details just enough to juxtapose the laptop reveal with a vague mention of overlooked envelopes of potential that echoed the tuition diversion without naming it outright, accompanying the post with a throwback photo where my younger self stood slightly blurred in the corner, the caption worded to invite chuckles about sibling dynamics while planting seeds of curiosity among the extended relatives who followed the account religiously for holiday updates. The online ripple effect unfolded gratifyingly over the following hours, with cousins and second uncles liking the post and firing off comment threads that danced around the implications, some chuckling at the classic dad surprises, others probing gently about the what-ifs in family funding stories, sparking a whisper network of private messages that reached even Lisa's professional contacts, one of whom texted her directly about the intriguing family lore, in a way that had her firing off a group chat plea to keep things light and celebratory, her flustered tone providing that satisfying undercurrent of wit without crossing into overt confrontation, as if their polished facade was starting to show faint cracks under the pressure of my orchestrated nudges. Yet as the digital echoes faded into the evening quiet of our living room where Mark and I settled with mugs of herbal tea to unwind from the day's labors, a fresh twist emerged when I revisited Mom's email subfolder during a late-night editing break, stumbling upon a chain from 5 years prior that alluded to a broken promise. Tied explicitly to my early career dreams, the correspondence laced with Dad's defensive replies about practical necessities favoring Lisa's trajectory, its contents hinting at a deeper layer of deception that made my heart race with the tantalizing prospect of how this revelation could redefine the entire reception narrative if woven into the final cut. The revelation from Mom's old email chain about that broken promise lingered in my thoughts like a persistent fog rolling in from the lake during the lead-up to Thanksgiving, intensifying the holiday chaos that descended upon our household with the sudden arrival of grocery hauls for turkey and sides, the air thick with the mingled scents of sage and cinnamon as I navigated the dual pressures of wrapping up a client's promotional reel deadline while mentally scripting the next phase of my reception video that now carried the weight of those unearthed family inequities, making every interaction feel like a step deeper into a minefield where one wrong edit could either illuminate the truths I'd long suspected or backfire spectacularly onto my own standing within the clan. With the calendar flipping toward the end of November, I arranged a midday coffee meetup with Lisa at that upscale chain near her downtown office, the one where baristas foam lattes with artistic flair that matches her self-image of upward mobility. And as we settled into the corner booth amid the hum of midday professionals tapping away on laptops, she dove straight into business with her trademark efficiency, outlining her vision for the video structure to highlight her career ascent and upcoming life chapter without any distracting side stories. Her words laced with that subtle directive tone that always positioned her as the director of her own narrative while relegating me to the behind-the-scenes technician, completely sidestepping the chat exclusion as if it were a minor oversight rather than a pointed dismissal. I nodded along, stirring my black coffee to mask the flicker of irritation at her assumption that my input was merely confirmatory, and countered with a light-hearted quip about ensuring the footage captured her radiant glow without the unflattering angles that holidays often brought with overindulgence and rushed makeup, drawing a reluctant chuckle from her that eased the undercurrent of tension just enough for her to open up about the guest list pressures and Dad's repeated emphasis on maintaining a polished, unemotional vibe, unwittingly providing me with fresh details on the rehearsal schedule and key attendees that I filed away for strategic integration into my evolving cut. Back at home that evening, the conversation with Mark took a more pointed turn as we prepared for a casual pre-Thanksgiving dinner with our neighbors. The kind of low-stakes gathering featuring potluck dishes and board games that served as a welcome counterpoint to the high-drama orbit of my blood relatives, yet he cornered me in the pantry amid the clatter of setting the table, his voice dropping to a whisper as he unpacked a tip from his sister who'd overheard rumblings in the family network about the social media posts stirring subtle unrest, urging me once again to pull back from these manipulations before they escalated into irreparable rifts, especially with Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' looming where forced proximity might force uncomfortable reckonings. His plea struck a chord of doubt in me, the kind that made me pause and consider how outsiders peering into the saga, those everyday Americans in their mid-40s juggling careers and kin, might view my choices as crossing from justified pushback into territory that eroded the very bonds I claimed to protect, prompting a humorous self-deprecating remark about my revenge plotting feeling like directing a low-budget thriller where I was both hero and potential villain, though the light vulgarity of labeling my family's expectations as greedy handouts disguised as traditions only half concealed the internal dilemma churning as we hosted the neighbors, their easy camaraderie a stark reminder of the life Mark and I had cultivated away from the colonial's competitive glare. Undeterred in the quiet hours after our guests departed, I retreated to my office under the cover of night, the blue glow of the screen illuminating the final tweaks to a teaser clip for the upcoming family preview night, layering in those subtle clues from the email discovery with split-screen sequences juxtaposing Lisa's spotlight moments against my shadowed contributions, narrated through a wry voiceover that infused humor via exaggerated reenactments of past holiday mishaps, like the year her elaborate pie collapsed into a gooey mess during dessert service, while the closing frame lingered on a faded photo from the tuition era, Dad's expression caught in mid-explanation about priorities, its ambiguity teasing the broken promise without full disclosure to heighten the intrigue. The preview gathering unfolded a few days later in the lead-up to Thanksgiving proper, the family home buzzing with early decorations and the aroma of roasting bird wafting from the kitchen as relatives trickled in for what was billed as a casual run-through. And I cued the teaser on the living room projector amid the circle of expectant faces, watching as the montage played out with its blend of nostalgia and nudge, Mom's initial applause faltering into a furrowed brow, Lisa's poised smile tightening into something resembling discomfort as cousins murmured about the clever editing choices that bordered on revealing too much, the witty undercurrents landing with satisfying precision to chip at her facade during the botched rehearsal that followed where she stumbled over her speech lines, blaming nerves on the unexpected tone in the clip. As the evening unraveled into awkward small talk laced with probing questions about family history that no one quite answered, the growing conflict hung palpably in the air like the smoke from an overcooked side dish, leaving me to savor the partial unraveling while grappling with the ethical haze of my escalations. But the true twist materialized toward the end when Aunt Jenna, ever the observant widow with her sharp wit honed from years of navigating sibling squabbles, drew me aside into the dimly lit study, her eyes twinkling with a conspiratorial glint as she hinted at possessing additional recordings from Dad's side of the family that could illuminate the full extent of that long-ago promise if I dared to incorporate them, forging an unexpected alliance that promised to propel my revenge into uncharted depths just as the first flurries of snow began dusting the windows outside. The reception evening materialized under a gentle veil of snowfall that blanketed the family colonial in a deceptive layer of serene festivity, transforming the sprawling front lawn into a winter wonderland where guests arrived in bundled coats and scarves, their laughter mingling with the soft crunch of boots on the path leading to the warmly lit entrance where strings of white lights draped the eaves like a promise of untroubled joy, yet beneath that picturesque exterior pulsed the undercurrents of anticipation I'd meticulously cultivated through weeks of subtle maneuvers, positioning this night as the culmination of my quiet insurgency against the years of sidelined contributions that had defined my role in this dynamic. As Emily Harper, the 45-year-old architect of these captured memories who had arrived early with my gear-laden van under the pretense of setup duties, I maneuvered through the arriving crowd with a practiced smile, exchanging pleasantries with distant cousins and Lisa's work associates who complimented the teaser clip's polish while oblivious to the deeper narrative threads I'd woven from those unearthed emails and Aunt Jenna's clandestine flash drive. The device now tucked in my pocket like a talisman holding audio fragments from Dad's past conversations that confirmed the tuition diversion as not just a pragmatic choice, but a deliberate favoritism rooted in his unspoken belief that Lisa's path held the family's brighter future. Lisa glided among the attendees in her form-fitting red gown that caught the light like a spotlight seeking her out, embodying the poised hostess with handshakes and air kisses that reinforced her status as the evening's undisputed center, pulling me aside briefly in the foyer with a quick embrace and murmured appreciation for stepping up on the video despite the space constraints from the chat, her words dripping with that casual entitlement that twisted the knife of exclusion just a fraction deeper, prompting a humorous inner retort about how her idea of family logistics felt like reserving the best seats for everyone but the one holding the camera, though I responded only with an affirming nod that masked the resolve hardening within me as I proceeded to the living room to finalize the projector connections amid the growing hum of conversations laced with holiday small talk about weather woes and year-end bonuses. Dad patrolled the perimeter of the gathering with his characteristic gruff efficiency, refilling punch bowls and clapping shoulders in a manner that screamed patriarchal control, his occasional glances toward me carrying the weight of those warning texts as if he anticipated the storm brewing in my final cut, while Mom fluttered between the kitchen and the crowd, her laughter a touch overamplified to drown out any whispers sparked by the recent online ripples, yet I caught the subtle clues I'd planted blooming into quiet exchanges among relatives, like Aunt Jenna's knowing wink from across the room where she mingled with old friends, her presence a silent endorsement of the alliance we'd forged in the study's shadows. As the clock neared the program's midpoint and the room filled to capacity with about 70 souls warmed by spiced cider and the crackle of the fireplace, I signaled the start of the video premiere from my laptop stationed discreetly by the screen. The lights dimming to a soft amber glow that cast elongated shadows across faces turned expectant, the montage opening innocently enough with a cascade of baby photos and milestone clips set to an uplifting acoustic track, humor threading through. Via voiceover anecdotes about childhood antics, like the time Lisa's attempt at baking Christmas cookies resulted in a flour-dusted kitchen disaster that had everyone slipping on doughy floors, drawing chuckles that eased into the more layered segments where split screens juxtaposed her triumphs against my overlooked efforts, the narration shifting to a wry tone that highlighted unsung heroes in every family frame without direct accusation, building suspense as the edit incorporated those audio snippets from Jenna's drive. Dad's voice faintly overlaying a scene from the tuition-era holiday, with his rationale for the reallocation phrased as investing in the sure bet. The revelation veiled in context to intrigue rather than indict until the climax freeze frame echoed that pivotal Christmas promise, his words about fair shares for those who shine hanging unresolved like a half-wrapped gift. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the assembly as the screen faded to black, Lisa's complexion draining to match the snow outside, while she pivoted toward me with eyes wide in a mix of betrayal and bewilderment. Mom's hand pressing to her chest in a gesture that blended shock with dawning recognition, and Dad's posture rigidifying into stony silence that spoke volumes about the skeletons I'd exhumed without a single confrontational word, the clever orchestration delivering waves of satisfying payback through the exposure of their hypocrisies that forced the room into a charged hush broken only by scattered questions from relatives probing the inspirational intent behind the choices, turning their polished event into a mirror reflecting the imbalances they'd normalized for decades. In the ensuing chaos of sidelong glances and hurried huddles, I slipped out to the porch for a breath of icy air, the snowflakes melting on my lashes as Mark joined me moments later. His coat draped over my shoulders while he searched my face for signs of regret amid the fallout, asking in that steady voice if the unraveling had quenched the fire or merely fanned new ones, and I leaned into him with a contemplative pause, the ambiguity settling over me like the accumulating drifts because while the witty denouement had reclaimed some measure of agency and prompted Lisa's tentative text about needing to talk later that buzzed unanswered in my pocket, it also left emotional fissures that might widen into permanent divides, with Dad's shadowed history hinting at further untold layers and the family's future holidays now shadowed by this exposure, inviting that lingering reflection for anyone witnessing this tale on whether my path to justice had fortified my boundaries or simply exchanged one form of silence for another. The kind laced with what-ifs that echo long after the lights dim and the snow covers everything in tentative white.